Well, there's a lot of talk about, a third of the food that we eat is pollen bees are responsible for. I think that's a bit of a misnomer. It's really about three-quarters of the different classes of bees or of plants that we have. Bees are primary pollinators for. So we wouldn't starve. I mean, there would be food, but it would be rice and wheat and those that are wind pollinated. So, but any your avocados, your vegetables, your fruits, and it's not so much the vegetables, but the vegetable seed. So would they need bees for pollination of cabbage seed here in where I'm at in Western Washington? The cabbage seed is a huge industry, and right now they're bringing in bees for pollination of that, which will result in your cauliflower and your broccoli and whatnot. So it's really incredible, the list of foods that when you look at it, that we would either have not have at all or have very smaller or less quantity of the food as if we did not have bees. So it's important that we try and make an ecosystem, even in an area where it's heavily agricultural, that bees can survive and thrive.
My understanding is that 2023 is shaping up to be one of the worst worst years in 2 decades for the bee population. Why is that? What are the factors playing into that?
Well, I have to bear with me a little bit. It goes all the way back to last spring when the hurricanes hit Florida. It slammed into one of the biggest bee producing areas in the country, and all these bees are coming into California in February for pollination of the almond crop, which is a huge need for bees to satisfy that. And combined with that, Florida, where beekeepers often will replenish their colonies from die-offs over the winter, they weren't there as much. There were some up in the Panhandle, but a major source. So a lot of beekeepers experienced very high losses this year for whatever reason, where some were experiencing 85-90% loss of colonies. And this is very good beekeepers. And it's a combination of the varroa mite and a myriad of viruses that are affecting the bees and causing them to die off and dwindle and die. And they couldn't replenish them as readily as they could in the past. And then on top of that, the series of atmospheric rivers that kept hitting California before, during, and after the almond bloom made it much more difficult for the beekeepers to be able to get in there and work the colonies, and much more difficult for the bees to be able to go out and forage and bring in pollen and nectar and do what they do and build up and become stronger. So it's been a combination of things. On the flip side of that, those heavy rains are also now causing lots of flowers to occur. So it's a delay of our season. So it could end up being a great honey year this year for some beekeepers, but in the fall and for the early pollination, it was a bit of a disaster.
Absolutely, can understand that. Humans obviously playing a bit of a pretty clear role in part of the decline. I know climate change impacts some of that. We have the pesticides, viruses, and those sorts of things, but obviously the weather also impacting that. Is there anything that humans can do to essentially help the populations get back to normal?
Yeah, it really comes down to planting flowers. As trite as that might sound, bees need to forage in order to be able to build up and be strong. And so, what any individual can do is just plant more flowers. Municipalities can encourage the planting of flowers. Don't cut your dandelions so readily. Little anecdotal story here in Island County, we had a groundskeeper who heard my talk at one of our pesticide recertification programs. I talked about bees and the importance of dandelions, and he comes up to me later and he goes, out in the rhododendron park where the baseball fields are, Tim, on the infield, dandelions are out of there. Outfield, dandelions are safe. So it just made the point, you don't always have to cut all the dandelions, remove all the flowers from your lawn or your garden. Let them go. And it's especially if it's not in an area where you have to have it manicured. It's okay to let the flowers go and promote lots of different types of flowers, because there's lots of different bees that work lots of different types of flowers. So the more we can make an ecosystem, a habitat, the better. And that is including in agricultural settings. We're promoting, and a lot of progressive farmers are actually putting in strips of flowers to try and make it so that the bees can be stimulated. And this is especially true for some of the native bees. Honeybees, we bring them in on trucks, we pollination and promote their ability to pollinate the crop. But the bumblebees, they have to be there year round or for a longer period of time. And we've also been able to show that when you have bumblebees and other bees working the same fields together, it's competitive, and they actually do a better job of pollination. So if we can make an environment where there's lots of flowers, lots of stimulation, the bees will work the crops that we're wanting them to pollinate and still be able to build up and become strong and be able to overwinter and survive year after year.
Now, Tim, I find the orchid bees of the Amazon incredibly fascinating. That symbiotic relationship they have between orchids in the Amazon, literally getting perfume from the male bees to be able to mate, and then bringing these orchid sacs with pollen on them, literally to flying them to other flowers to be pollinated. It really gives me a different perspective on the symbiotic relationship that we have with insects as tiny as a penny. What's your favorite bee and why is that?
Well, the honeybee, I'm in my 70s now, and I've been working honeybees since I was 12. So they're wonderful animals, but all bees are great. They all have this unique and different aspects of them, and it is amazing the evolutionary process that bees have evolved with plants, and in terms of their being able to transport the pollen, the male gametes over to, and it's why we have the diversity of crops and flowers that we have, that and fruit that we have, is because of this evolutionary process between bees and plants. There are a lot of different animals that pollinate, but by far bees are the most effective and efficient pollinators out there.
Dr. Timothy Lawrence, any closing thoughts on this?
Plant flowers. If you want to help bees, don't become a beekeeper. It's expensive and there's a huge learning curve. But plant flowers, everybody can do that.
I think I could do that, and I think many others can as well. Thanks so much, Dr. Timothy Lawrence over there at Washington State University, professor of entomology and researcher there. Thanks so much for joining us.
Have a good day.
You as well.